In the shadow of a crumbling Byzantine world, where the echoes of the Fourth Crusade still lingered, a child named Michael Palaiologos was born in 1224, destined to reshape an empire. Born into the noble Palaiologos family in the Empire of Nicaea, a Byzantine successor state carved from the ruins of Constantinople's fall in 1204, Michael's early life was steeped in ambition and intrigue. His father, Andronikos Palaiologos, a megas domestikos, commander-in-chief, and his mother, Theodora Angelina Palaiologina, granddaughter of Emperor Alexios III Angelos, gifted him a lineage tracing back to the imperial houses of Doukas, Komnenos, and Angelos III dynasties that had once ruled Byzantium's golden age. Yet this noble blood was both a blessing and a curse, thrusting him into a world of political machinations where trust was a rare commodity and survival demanded cunning. Michael's childhood unfolded amid the exile courts of Nicaea and Nicomedia, where the Byzantine elite plotted to reclaim their lost capital. Raised partly by his elder sister Martha, only 10 years his senior, and married to Nikephoros Tarchoniades, Michael grew up with tales of imperial glory and the shame of Latin occupation. His early years were unremarkable, save for a vivid imagination dreams of recapturing Constantinople fueled his restless spirit. By his teens, he was appointed governor of Melnik and Saris in Thrace, a role that showcased his administrative talent under his father's watchful eye. But ambition soon clashed with suspicion. In 1253, Emperor John III Vatatzes accused him of plotting treason, a charge that could have ended his life. With wit and charm, Michael survived a trial by ordeal holding a red-hot iron without injury, a testament to his resourcefulness, though the scars of mistrust lingered. The turning point came with the death of Emperor Theodore II Lascaris in 1258, leaving the Empire of Nicaea under the fragile rule of his 8-year-old son, John IV, Ducas Lascaris. Michael, then in his mid-30s, saw his chance. A few days after Theodore's passing, he orchestrated a coup against George Muzalan, the young emperor's guardian, seizing power with ruthless precision. Invested with the titles of Megas Du and Despotes, by November 1258, Michael's ascent accelerated. On January 1, 1259, he proclaimed himself co-emperor at Nymphaeon, sidelining John IV with the aid of the Republic of Genoa, whose naval support bolstered his claim. This move was less a coronation of legitimacy and more a declaration of intent, a man of noble birth seizing a throne by force, his eyes fixed on Constantinople. Michael's rise was cemented by military success. In 1259, he led his forces to victory at the Battle of Pelagonia, defeating an alliance of William of Villehardouin, Prince of Achaia, and Michael II Komnenos Ducas of Epirus. The clash, fought in the valley of Pelagonia, showcased his strategic mind-out maneuvering, a coalition backed by Sicily's Manfred. He captured their leaders, securing Nicaea's western borders and boosting his legitimacy. Historians hail this triumph as a prelude to his greater glory, a moment that silenced doubters and rallied the Byzantine elite. Yet his methods were not without cost. To consolidate power, he blinded John IV in December 1261, a brutal act that sparked outrage and led Patriarch Arsenios to excommunicate him, a spiritual wound that haunted his reign. The pinnacle arrived on July 25, 1261, when General Alexios Strategopoulos, with a mere 600 troops, seized Constantinople in an opportunistic strike, while the Latin garrison was absent. Michael rushed to the city on August 15, entering triumphantly as crowds cheered, his infant son Andronikos II crowned alongside him. The Latin Empire, established in 1204, crumbled, and Michael transformed the Empire of Nicaea into a restored Byzantine Empire. He abolished Latin customs, repopulated the capital from 35,000 to 70,000, and rebuilt churches and palaces, his vision of a new Constantine taking shape. Yet this glory was shadowed by the cries of John IV, now a monk in obscurity, and the excommunication that lingered, a reminder that Michael's throne rested on blood and betrayal. From a noble youth to a crowned emperor, Michael VIII Palaiologos' rise was a saga of ambition, warfare, and moral compromise, setting the stage for a reign of recovery and relentless struggle against a world eager to see Byzantium fall. In the summer of 1261, Michael VIII Palaiologos stood atop the walls of Constantinople, his purple cloak billowing in the breeze, his gaze fixed on the Golden Horn, where the city's domes gleamed under a reborn Byzantine sky. The nobleman from Nicaea, who had risen through ambition and cunning, had achieved the unthinkable, reclaiming Constantinople from the Latin Empire after 57 years of exile. His coronation, alongside his infant son Andronicos II, a symbol of a restored empire. The boy who once governed Melnik, who survived a trial by ordeal under John III Vatatzes, and who orchestrated a coup to seize power, was now Emperor Michael VIII, the founder of the Palaiologan dynasty. Yet, the road ahead was fraught with peril. Enemies circled the fragile empire, from the ambitious Charles of Anjou in the west to the restless Bulgarians and Turks in the east, while internal strife, economic woes, and religious schisms threatened to unravel his hard-won gains. Michael's reign would be defined by a delicate dance of victories and challenges, his legacy a testament to resilience in a world eager to see Byzantium fall. Michael's first victory was the restoration of Constantinople itself, a triumph of strategy and opportunism. After General Alexios Strategopoulos seized the city in July 1261, Michael wasted no time. He entered on August 15, greeted by cheering crowds. The Hagia Sophia, reconsecrated as Orthodox priests, chanted hymns, erasing the Latin rites imposed since 1204. He repopulated the city, increasing its inhabitants from 35,000 to 70,000 by encouraging migration from Nicaea and Thrace. His policies breathing life into a capital that had withered under Latin neglect. He rebuilt the seawalls, restored churches, and founded the Palaiologan Renaissance, a cultural revival marked by the works of scholars like George Acropolites, whose histories chronicled Michael's deeds. The Blachernay Palace became his seat, its golden mosaics, a symbol of Byzantine resurgence, though the cost of reconstruction drained the treasury, a burden that would haunt his reign. The empire Michael inherited was a shadow of its former self. Its territories, reduced to Constantinople, parts of Thrace, Thessalonica, and the Peloponnese, surrounded by hostile neighbors. His first external challenge came from Charles of Anjou, the ambitious king of Sicily, who dreamed of reviving the Latin Empire. In 1266, Charles conquered the kingdom of Sicily, defeating Manfred at the Battle of Benevento, his victory securing papal support for a crusade against Byzantium. Michael, aware of the threat, turned to diplomacy, a skill honed in Nicaea's courts. In 1267, he negotiated the Treaty of Viterbo with Baldwin II, the exiled Latin emperor, and Charles, delaying their plans by offering territorial concessions in the west. But Charles remained undeterred. In 1277, he declared himself King of Albania, seizing Durazzo and forming alliances with Serbia and Bulgaria, his fleet poised to strike Constantinople. Michael countered with a masterstroke. He dispatched emissaries to the Council of Lyon in 1274, agreeing to a union of the Orthodox and Catholic churches under papal authority, a move that earned Pope Gregory X's support and temporarily halted Charles' ambitions, though it sparked outrage among his Orthodox subjects. The church union, while a diplomatic victory, became Michael's greatest internal challenge. The Byzantine clergy, led by Patriarch Joseph I, fiercely opposed the union, viewing it as a betrayal of orthodoxy, a sentiment shared by the populace, who chanted, "Better the Turk's turban than the Pope's tiara." In 1275, 273, Michael replaced Joseph with the pro-Union John XI Bekos, but resistance persisted. Monks and nobles, including his own sister Eulogia, supported the anti-Union Arseniite faction, named after Patriarch Arsenios, who had excommunicated Michael for blinding John IV Lascaris. The emperor, desperate to maintain control, resorted to harsh measure imprisoning dissenters, confiscating monastic lands, and executing prominent Arsenites, actions that deepened the schism and alienated his people. By 1280, the Union had failed to win papal military aid, and Michael's excommunication by Pope Martin IV in 1281, at Charles's urging, underscored the futility of his efforts, leaving him isolated between East and West. Beyond religious strife, Michael faced military threats on multiple fronts. In 1262, the Second Bulgarian Empire, under Tsar Constantine Teak, launched raids into Thrace, exploiting Byzantine weakness. Michael responded with a campaign in 1263, recapturing key fortresses like Philippopolis, his troops bolstered by Nogai Khan's Golden Horde, whom he had allied through marriages. Illegitimate daughter Euphrosyne wed Nogai in 1265. The Mongols' cavalry crushed Bulgarian resistance, securing Thrace by 1266, a victory that showcased Michael's knack for leveraging alliances, a skill he had honed in Nicaea. Yet, the Turks posed a graver threat. By the 1270s. The Seljuk Sultanate of Rum, weakened by Mongol overlordship, gave way to independent Turkish beyliks, who raided Byzantine Anatolia. Michael, focused on the West, delegated defense to local governors, but his neglect allowed the Turks to seize key territories, a failure that would haunt his successors. Economic challenges compounded Michael's woes. The empire's treasury, depleted by Constantinople's restoration and military campaigns, relied heavily on Italian trade. Genoese merchants, granted privileges in the Treaty of Nymphaeon, 1261, dominated the Black Sea trade, while Venetian influence persisted despite their expulsion. Michael debased the hyperpyron, the Byzantine gold coin, to fund his wars, a move that eroded confidence in the currency, inflation soaring as peasants bore the burden of heavy taxes. His reliance on foreign mercenaries, including the Catalan Company, further strained resources, their cost outweighing their loyalty, a dependency that foreshadowed future instability. Despite these challenges, Michael achieved notable victories in the West. In 1272, he reconquered the Despotate of Epirus, defeating John I Ducas at the Battle of Neopatris, his troops outmaneuvering the Epirote army with a feigned retreat, a tactic reminiscent of Khalid ibn al-Walid's strategies. This victory secured northwestern Greece, though Epirus remained a thorn in his side, its rulers plotting with Charles of Anjou. Michael's diplomatic efforts peaked in 1282, when he orchestrated the Sicilian Vespers revolt in Palermo against Charles of Anjou, funded by Byzantine gold and supported by Aragon's Peter III. The uprising, sparked on March 30, 1282, saw Sicilians massacre French garrisons, Charles's fleet destroyed, his dream of conquering Constantinople shattered, a triumph that preserved Byzantium for another generation. Michael VIII's reign was a tapestry of victories and trialchies, restoration of Constantinople, cultural revival, and diplomatic coups against Charles of Anjou stood as testaments to his brilliance. Yet his religious policies, economic struggles, and failure to stem the Turkish advance sowed seeds of decline, a legacy that would weigh heavily as his health faltered and his empire faced new threats. In the twilight of 1282, Michael VIII Palaiologos sat upon the throne of Constantinople, his once vibrant eyes shadowed by exhaustion, his hands trembling as they gripped the scepter of a restored Byzantine empire. The emperor, who had reclaimed the city from the Latin yoke in 261, outmaneuvered Charles of Anjou with the Sicilian Vespers, and revived the Palaiologan Renaissance, now faced a reign unraveling at its seams. The nobleman from Nicaea, whose youth was shaped by ambition and whose rise was marked by the cunning of Pelagonia and the diplomacy of Lyon, had spent 2 decades defending a fragile empire against relentless foes, Bulgarians, Turks, and Western Crusaders, while wrestling with internal dissent over the church union. By 1282, at 58, his health was failing, his body worn by stress and disease, his spirit burdened by the failures that followed his triumphs, a decline that would culminate in a quiet death, leaving a legacy of brilliance overshadowed by division and decay. Michael's physical decline began in the late 1270s, the relentless demands of his reign taking a toll. Chroniclers note he suffered from gout and a wasting illness, his legs swollen and his movements labored, a stark contrast to the warrior who once led campaigns in Thrace. The economic strain of his policy's debasement of the Hyperpyron, reliance on Genoese trade, and heavy taxation had sparked unrest, peasants revolting in Asia Minor, their cries echoing the discontent of the Orthodox clergy. The failed church union with Rome, agreed upon at the Council of Lyon in 1274, had alienated his subjects, the Arsonite faction's resistance growing as monks preached against his rule, their excommunications a spiritual wound that gnawed at his soul. In 1281, Pope Martin IV, pressured by Charles of Anjou, excommunicated Michael, a blow that severed his fragile alliance with the West and left him isolated. His diplomatic triumph of the Sicilian Vespers overshadowed by this papal curse. The Sicilian Vespers, while a masterstroke in 1282, brought no lasting relief. The revolt in Sicily, funded by Michael's gold and supported by Aragon's Peter III, toppled Charles's power, but the victory was Pyrrhic. The Genoese, Michael's allies, turned against him, their rivalry with Venice escalating into a naval war that disrupted Byzantine trade. The Turks, sensing weakness, intensified raids in Anatolia, their beyliksed by figures like Osman I seizing lands Michael had neglected to defend, the frontier crumbling as his treasury faltered. In 1282, a Bulgarian incursion under Tsar Ivan Asen III threatened Thrace, forcing Michael to dispatch his son Andronikos with an army, a campaign that drained resources and exposed the empire's vulnerability. His health worsened. Chroniclers describe him coughing blood, his once commanding voice reduced to a rasp, a man broken by the weight of a crown he had fought so hard to reclaim. The final blow came from within his own family. Andronikos II, now co-emperor, chafed under his father's shadow, their relationship strained by Michael's authoritarian rule and the church union controversy. Andronikos, aligned with the anti-union faction, began distancing himself, his court a hotbed of dissent as nobles whispered of Michael's failures. In 1282, Michael's decision to marry off his daughter Eudokia to the Mongol Khan Nogai's son, a diplomatic move to secure an alliance, further alienated his son, who saw it as a betrayal of Byzantine pride. The emperor, confined to the Blachernae palace, grew paranoid, his advisors plotting in the shadows, his once loyal generals questioning his judgment. The excommunication and economic collapse fueled rumors of divine punishment, the people turning against the man who had restored their capital, their chants of "better the Turk's turban" a haunting refrain. Michael's death came on December 11, 1282, in the palace at Pachomion, near Constantinople, a quiet end for a ruler whose life had been a storm of conquest and conflict. He was 58, his body ravaged by illness, his mind clouded by the empire's woes. Surrounded by a few loyal attendants, he whispered his last words, reportedly a plea for forgiveness from God and his people, his eyes closing as the Hagia Sophia's distant bells tolled, a sound that once marked his triumph, now signaling his departure. His son Andronikos II, now sole emperor, ordered a modest funeral, but the Arsynite clergy refused to bury him with full rites. His body interred in the monastery of St. Demetrios, a site far from the grandeur of his early victories, a poignant reflection of his fall from grace. The aftermath was immediate and chaotic. Andronicos II, eager to distance himself from his father's policies, abandoned the church union, restoring Patriarch Joseph I and alienating the West. The empire's finances crumbled further, the debased currency losing value, while the Turks advanced unchecked in Anatolia, their raids a prelude to the Ottoman rise. Michael's allies, like the Genoese, withdrew support, their trade wars with Venice weakening Byzantine ports. His death marked the end of a reign that had restored Constantinople but failed to secure its future, a paradox of triumph and tragedy that would shape the Palaiologan dynasty's fate. Yet, even in decline, Michael's legacy endured. His restoration of Constantinople breathed new life into Byzantine culture, the Palaiologan Renaissance inspiring art and scholarship that outlasted his reign. His diplomatic victories outwitting Charles of Anjou and leveraging Mongol alliances preserved the empire for another 2 centuries, a testament to his strategic mind. Historians debate his ruthlessness blinding John IV, suppressing the Arsynites, but acknowledge his role as a bridge between the Nicaean exile and the medieval Byzantine resurgence, his name a symbol of resilience in a fractured world. Picture him entering Constantinople in 1261, his banners raised high, or negotiating at Lyon, his voice steady against papal pressure. See him on his deathbed, his empire slipping away, his eyes reflecting a life of ambition and sacrifice. Michael VIII was no mere emperor. He was a titan who defied odds, his story a call to endure. Join us again, like, subscribe, and let his legacy inspire your own journey.